Mostly the council members and prior council members, if they could take their seats so we can get started. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Louise. Good evening, and thank you for coming. I will call the regular meeting of the Parks and Rec Commission to order Thursday, January 5th, 2023 at 6 p.m. Luis, will you call the roll?
Absolutely. Chair Taylor.
Present.
Vice Chair Idner.
Present.
Commissioner. Commissioner Walker.
Present.
Commissioner Wilson.
Here.
Commissioner Ruff.
Here.
And Commissioner Firestone has not joined us at this time.
We still have a quorum, so we'll proceed with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me. And I have one public comment for items not on the agenda. William Ryrick.
I just wanted to point out that there has not been a wrinkle in the space-time continuum,
Okay.
and that your liaison is not me tonight. Your actual council person is here. So please note that, no, not me.
Yes. Noted for the record that item 8, our council liaison will be Ms. Lang. Thank you. Okay, and Luis, will you share the police report, please?
Absolutely. We'll go ahead and begin with a comprehensive report for the month of November. As one may recall, the report provided last month only contained information through the 18th, and the reason for the short period was due to the need of issuing the agenda. Due to the need of the agenda in a timely manner. So for the month of November, beginning at the skate park, there was one call for service and one call unrelated to recreation. For Livy Park, 7 calls for service and 1 arrest noted. That arrest was for consumption of alcohol in the park. For Zero Zodi Park, there's 3 calls for service and 1 extra patrol noted, as well as a call unrelated to recreation. City Hall campus, there was 2 calls for service, 1 extra patrol, and 1 call unrelated to recreation. For Clough Vista Park, Rotary Park, and Daly Ranch Park, there were no calls for service or other activity noted. For the month of December, at the skate park, there was 1 call for service, 3 extra patrols, and 1 call unrelated to recreation. For Libby Park, there was 1 call for service, 1 extra patrol, and 1 citation noted. The citation was for smoking in the park. For Zero Zodi Park, there was 8 calls for service, 4 extra patrols, 2 arrests noted. Those arrests were for the same individual with a misdemeanor warrant, and 3 calls unrelated to recreation. For City Hall campus, there's 1 call for service. For Rotary Park, there's 1 call unrelated to recreation, and Clough and Daly Ranch Park, there's no calls for service or activity noted there. And with that, that concludes the police report.
Thank you. Can you go over the report totals for the 3 months and is it, it's September, October, November for 2022, but we don't have, where do we find the 2021 calls for service? Is there something that, are we going to start comparing?
Yes, so that
like
was...
this time next year, we'll have 2 blue columns. Is that the...
Yeah, so at last month's meeting, we provided a overview of the calls for service from June 2021 through November of 2022. The information there, of course, included the total calls for service during those months, the extra patrols, and the arrests and citations. During that time, we noted the average calls for service was 16.22, and extra patrols was 11. The average arrests and citations were 1.77 per month. with the information that we have during these next couple of months, we'll be able to go ahead and compare based off of last year to the calls for service.
When did we start collecting the data is what I guess?
June of 2021.
21. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I like that. I like seeing the graph next to each other, and
Yeah.
I think it'll be nice for the public to be able to see where crime is up or down.
Mhm.
That's-
Yeah, and the report from November, we have a pretty good graph that shows the calls for service and the extra patrols as well as the arrests and citations, and it kind of gives a layout of every single month there. That's a pretty
I'd
good
just like
graph
to
for
compare it to the
reference.
prior years.
Sure.
That way we can see the trends.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, and I didn't see a public works report. Do we have a public works
We
report?
do,
In my
yes.
packet?
For Cliff Vista Park, seasonal pruning continues. There's also a routine service to the fountain. At Daily Park, there's lawn repair in progress. Libby Park, there's seasonal pruning as well as maintenance to the fountain. There's also maintenance to Libby Bowl as well as to the courts. And on the bike path, the wooden fence railing was repaired. At the skate park, the timer was readjusted due to the power loss that occurred. And graffiti was found and removed from the restroom. Over at Daily Ranch Park, seasonal pruning, lawn maintenance, and gopher abatement continues. Zero Zodi Park, the rental area was pressure washed. Sports field, we're doing a lot of preservation of the sports fields right now because we have received extensive amount of rains. We are closing them. And then it looks like the sand was rototilled, and we'll go ahead and do that once again once it stops raining.
On the softball fields?
That's the playground.
Playgrounds?
Playground,
Mhm.
yep. And with that, that concludes the Public Works report.
Thank you.
Mhm.
On our consent items, we have the December 1st, 2022 meeting minutes. Any discussion on the minutes, edits, comments, changes? Thank you. Louise, can you call the roll?
Of course. Vice Chair Idner,
Yes.
Chair Taylor,
Yes.
Commissioner Walker,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, and moving into item 6, our presentations, actions, and discussion items. We have 4 items on here. I just wanted to say before we start our presentation, I have a number of speaker cards. We'll hear the presentation, and then perhaps that might even address some of the questions on the speaker cards. And we'll hear additional comments. And then I did just also want to say, prior to setting the agenda, I did receive a request for one of the items to be pushed, and I wanted to just clarify that there's no action being taken on 6B. We're receiving an update, and just to clarify why it's actually on the agenda to keep everybody up to date on where we're at in the process. So with that, we'll move on to 6A. We have our election of officers. Recommendation that the commission nominate and elect officers, a chair and a vice chair.
I would be happy to nominate Susie to continue as chair.
Well, thank you. And any discussion? No? Okay. Is there a second? We can't move without a second.
I second.
Okay, we'll move right along. Luis, will you call the roll? And
Of
we'll
course.
do the vice chair next.
Sure. Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Walker,
Yes.
Chair Taylor,
Yes.
Vice Chair Idner.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, and we'll do a separate motion for vice chair, just so there's no confusion. Sage, would you like to be vice chair? I would like to nominate you for that. You've been a great vice chair, unless someone else is interested. Yes? Okay, well, I will nominate Sage, if I could get a second.
I'll second.
Great. And Luis, when you're ready.
Commissioner Walker,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Intner,
Yes.
Chair Taylor,
Yes.
motion passes.
I have to say, in all the years of sitting on the commission, that was the least painful election we've ever been through. So thank you for your support. I appreciate that. Okay, moving on to 6B. As I mentioned, we have several public speakers that would like to speak on the topic, but I think we'll hear our staff report first, and then we'll perhaps answer some of those questions. So with that, Louise, can you present the commission to receive the update on the pickleball sound mitigation from PSM LLC?
Of course. And thank you. I'd like to go ahead and begin by welcoming Mr. Robert Unitek, President of Pickleball LLC, and Dr. Barry Wireman, Acoustical Engineer for PSM LLC, who are joining us via Zoom. As seen in the attachment A of the staff report, PSM has provided a preliminary report that contains a summary of their findings and preliminary recommendations for the sound assessments that were conducted in November. In November, on November 15th, Mr. Unitek, his assistant and staff met at Soul Park where the assessments began. From there, the assessments continued to Lower Libby Tennis Courts and concluded at City Hall campus. The assessments consisted of roughly 2 hours per location, where various measurements were taken at each location. A final report is anticipated to be made available later this month, and with the additional analysis and recommendation, the ad hoc committee will have information to provide a final report to the commission for consideration. With that, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Unitek to go ahead and present a summary of the report that has been provided.
Point of order. I would actually like to comment on the report before we turn it over to Mr. Unitek and Dr. Wireman. I think there's some important information that was left out and not shared with the public that needs to be shared.
Okay, that's fine.
Sure.
Are
So,
are they listening?
yes.
Yes. Karen, just make sure your microphones are, so they can hear really
Yes.
clear on Zoom.
Yes, I will. So I'm going to read a little bit from a letter that I sent to the chair and the other commissioners and to Supervisor Gomez, because as a member of the Pickleball Ad Hoc Committee, I objected to this report being made public at this time, and I want to explain why. Two significant reasons. The Pickleball Ad Hoc Committee did not have an opportunity to review and discuss this preliminary report, which is an essential item on this agenda item. And I understand it's an update, but we literally received the report the day before the agenda had to be submitted and circulated, and we did not have time to have a discussion, even a virtual discussion. And although this report is labeled preliminary, it is actually an incomplete, deficient draft that offers a narrative of sound testing activities and unsolicited opinions without supporting data. It's premature for us to be discussing this report tonight or giving any kind of update. And I don't want to inconvenience our guests. I have complete respect for them. And I am really, I'm apologetic that this is the stance that I feel compelled to take. I've explained why we didn't have time. Let me explain why I consider this a deficient report. What we asked for, which was included, quote, regarding sound standards and noise mitigation measures for pickleball play, are not fully addressed in this draft and in a clear manner based on city sound policies and acquired sound testing data, which is exactly what was requested in the request for proposal. Recommendations for sound standards are missing from the list of promised work even. The promised work is the critical expertise for which the city hired PSM. Sound mitigation measures and their expected effect on sound levels is the crux of the engagement. Without that information, the city has simply received another set of sound tests and another set of opinions about where pickleball play should or should not occur. The request for proposal to which PSM responded and under which it was contracted explicitly stated, and I quote, "The consultant should refrain from offering any opinion as to the advisability of pickleball play or recreation at the current and prospective locations," end quote. In its executive summary and throughout this preliminary report, PSM offers just such opinions. It did so despite the admonition to not. It did so without presenting any comprehensive data and information about the effects of sound mitigation. That is supposedly to come later. PSM was contracted to advise on sound mitigation and recommend standards and resources that the city can consider going forward. PSM was not hired to address noise complaints. The report, to my opinion, is incomplete, poorly organized in terms of requested deliverables, and ventures into subjects specifically requested to be avoided. It is not ready for proper discussion and consideration by the commission. It's also led to what I feel like is a thumb on the scale. In the administrative report, the offer to, if the recommendation for quieter paddles and balls is accepted, it's an endorsement by the city staff by the offer of to purchase balls. The ad hoc committee hasn't even had a chance to discuss whether that's a viable sound mitigation option that we want to recommend to the commission, to the city council. So to have it endorsed already is putting the cart before the horse. We've stated all along on the Pickleball Ad Hoc Committee that we understand our charge to address the totality of the question of pickleball in Ojai, how to accommodate its local popularity and growth, as well as how to integrate it respectfully into the physical spaces of the valley. In our planned report, we intend to incorporate all the data, research, and input we have accumulated to offer clear, comprehensive, time-based recommendations to the commission. I remain hopeful that the PSM expertise will inform some of those recommendations, but I urge everyone to wait for the ad hoc committee's final report before forming opinions or assumptions or endorsements or acceptance or rejection of any possible recommendations. PSM was not hired to do this job. That's the job of the ad hoc committee, the commission, and the city council. So I strenuously object to this report being discussed at this point in time, and I'm not sure what having our experts here at this point in time will offer unless they can give us the data that they did not give us. And if it's appropriate, I do have one question for Mr. Untek. Thank you.
And just to clarify for the record, is that a report from the ad hoc committee or your position as a commissioner?
That is my position as a commissioner, as I have not had a chance to discuss any of this with my colleague.
Mm-hmm. And Commissioner Firestone is absent from tonight, so we won't be receiving a report from the ad hoc committee on this. And I just want to say again, given the topic itself, and in recent months, the transparency issue, it was my call to put it on there. I think that the public needs to know that we are making progress. We were supposed to be on a fast track. It is a very well-discussed topic, and I think the public needs to know where we're at. This is not a final draft. We are receiving it. We have the opportunity to continue to gather data. Staff can work both with ad hoc and with our consultants. And so I would like to receive the update, both from the staff and if we'd like to ask as a commission questions of PSM, we can do so. But we certainly, I would anticipate that the ad hoc committee would continue to work with our consultants and staff as prior to preparing the final report. Is that correct?
Yes.
I'd like to ask a question. So as part of the contract, they are here with us tonight, as we added that to the contract at the end. Is this the one and only time they'll be with us?
No, they will be with us next month as well.
So they'll be
First
back when they present the final report?
Correct.
Okay, so this is, and how come we're seeing it before it's completed? What are the goals? Is this a request of the consultants, or is this something, I'm trying to understand how we got to where we are right this minute.
Sure. So essentially, it was to go ahead and provide an update on the work that was done, in addition to an update on the report that was received.
Which we know is not complete.
Correct.
Although we did not know it was not going to be complete in this form.
I'm just trying to understand, because originally I thought our timeline when we looked at it was that we would receive the report, and then we would have the consultants come and we could discuss it, and then we would then give feedback at that point. So it seems different than the timeline we laid out originally. So this seems like we deviated from the plan we put forth. So I'm just trying to understand the benefit of doing this now.
Sure. So again, it's to add on what Chair Taylor noted is when being transparent as possible and the information that has been received and the work that has been done. In regards to having Mr. Unitek here as explaining the methodologies that were taken to go ahead and complete the report and the data that was collected.
Okay. So if we were looking at work product and had to put a percentage on it, how close are we to complete with this report?
I think that would be a question better for Mr. Unitek. Unfortunately, I can't gauge on,
Okay.
yeah.
Can we ask that question before we get a presentation, or I don't understand where we are exactly in our process.
No, yes, absolutely. Can you bring him, is he online?
Yeah.
Can he hear
Yeah.
what's happening? Okay.
We can ask that question certainly, but based on the RFP, which I have not seen the actual contract, but I presume the RFP is part of it, this is less than 50% of what we asked for.
Okay, so if we could ask that question as a consultant, that would be helpful.
And again, I just want to be clear, this is, even though the consultants are here, this is, in my opinion and my understanding, this is no different than the ad hoc committee giving a report like we did last month. This is where we're at. This is the progress we're making. I mean, it made it very clear it's not a final
That is correct,
product.
yes.
So if there's deficiencies that are not in line with the RFP or that the ad hoc committee feels needs to be addressed, we have the whole next month to deal with this
Yes.
and bring them back. And then the consultants will also be present via Zoom to answer any additional questions. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions from the commission before we ask the questions of the consultant? Okay.
No.
Okay. Unitek, Mr. Unitek. Mr. Unitek, are you there?
Yes, I am here. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, thank you. Welcome.
And I think I have my colleague, Dr. Barry Wireman, online also. Is that true, Barry?
That's true. I'm here, but I will be muted.
Okay. Yes, I'd be happy to report briefly on what we did in November and what the status is of our report, and also how this relates to the RFP and our response. I understand Commissioner Wilson's comment, I think, and I would certainly try to address that completely in the January session of our work. Basically, we got to go ahead in November. We did arrange to do the site visit, which was an add-on, and we did the testing. And this report really was an analysis of that data. It was a report of the data, an analysis of the data, and our conclusions about how the pickleball sound at 3 different sites compared to the measured background noise level. And we see that as a standard for the performance of pickleball. If you're in a very noisy area with very high levels of background noise, pickleball noise is more tolerant. more tolerated. And if you're in a very quiet area, pickleball noise needs to be somewhat near the background noise level. That was our effort to bring the pickleball noise to some standard. I'm not exactly sure precisely what Commissioner Wilson wants in terms of standards. There are no written specific standards for a level of pickleball. It would not be sensible to say what the level might be since background noise and other factors come into play. But I'm more than happy to report on what we saw at the sites. And I do believe we were asked to recommend sound mitigation. And in fact, I have a portion of the request for proposal in front of me, and it says, directly, it says recommend sound mitigation measures, projected impact on current sound levels for each site. And it asks for a written report summarizing a noise assessment, the recommended sound standards, and recommended mitigation measures for each site. That is the work that Dr. Wireman and I will be beginning. He's on his way to Florida. I go to Florida next week, and we will be working together in Florida to put together the final section of this written report. Again, this report that I have already submitted to you includes the data that we measured at 3 different sites and our recommendations about those sites. I'd be pleased to go into a discussion of each site if you're interested in hearing that, but perhaps you have other questions.
Well, I think that we need to get the ad hoc committee a copy of the RFP so that
Yep.
everybody can be on the same page, because they can't address the final draft and have educated discussions if they don't know that if staff added something, sorry, to the
No.
RFP.
No, what Dr. Unit or what Mr. Unitek indicated has been in the RFP. RFP was put together by the ad hoc in consultation with staff. And just to confirm what Mr. Unitek indicated, it is on the RFP, the second page of the RFP. So it's something that, we're happy to go ahead and redistribute once again to all commissioners.
There just seems to be a disconnect on what's in the RFP and what's in the report and where it's lacking, and if it's over providing more information than we're asking for. So I think it would be good to have that to the ad hoc committee and perhaps at the final report, so we can address to make sure that all the issues are included.
Yeah, I'm happy to go ahead and do that. I'm happy to report to redistribute to all parties, all commissioners, as well as Mr. Unitek.
Okay. I don't have any specific questions at this point. I was pleased to see that the work's moving forward, and I can open it up to the commission for questions or discussions, but I would agree with Commissioner Entner that it is a little bit premature. It's nice to have them here to ask questions, but I would like to see the report be more complete before we dive really into a commission discussion. But again, to be transparent, I think I appreciate their work thus far, and I would like it to continue within the parameters of that RFP.
Sure, yeah, we could definitely do it.
I just have one question that I'd like to ask Mr. Unitek. And
Yes.
it is related to the RFP. So Bob, if you have it in front of you, which I have it in front of me, my question is, sorry, let me just find exactly where on the second page, page 2 of 3, the first full paragraph under scope of work, there is the statement, which I read earlier in my comments, quote, "The consultant should refrain from offering any opinion as to the advisability of pickleball play or recreation at the current and prospective locations," end quote. So my question to you is, why did you in fact offer such opinion on the advisability, which is not the sound mitigation recommendations? I'm not speaking of that. I'm talking about statements like Sol Park is a noteworthy location for pickleball courts. That to me is exactly what we ask the consultant to refrain from. So can you tell me why you had an opinion on every site?
Yes,
this
okay,
report?
let me try to address that directly. And I'll try to make that fit into the whole picture of what we think we were trying to do. I think we were asked what it would take to get the sound levels to a reasonable level, to an acceptable level to us, and that means at neighbors, at sensitive sound points, so that pickleball is possible. That is, we mitigate the sound of pickleball enough so that it would not be a source of complaints or difficulties. We're not saying go there and play. We're saying it's fine to go there and play. If you want to play there at Soul Park, you're not likely to cause any sound problems. We measure the sound level at the golf course. I believe it was 53.5 dBA. That's half as loud as ordinary conversation. So we say that Soul Park pickleball play would not impact the quality of life of the people who are around Soul Park. At Libby Park, we're not saying you should play there. You might have other reasons not to play there.
Excuse me, Bob.
Yes.
That's exactly what the RFP said we did not want. So who asked you to come up with recommendations around sites so that the neighbors would not be disturbed?
Well, when we do sound assessment and sound mitigation, we assess whether it's likely to cause annoyance to people nearby. That is our understanding and our own definition of what a sound assessment is. Would you have simply preferred that we simply provide the numbers measured in decibels and made no recommendation about whether those numbers should be adjusted? We basically said you don't have to do any adjustment at Soul Park. You don't need a sound barrier, and you don't need to use quieter equipment. That was our recommendation. If you want to play pickleball there, use whatever gear you like.
Okay,
I'm
thank you.
certainly,
Thank you. I
I'm
think that's,
comfortable with trying to go back to these statements and avoid any suggestion you should actually play pickleball there. I hope it wasn't telling you that. What it said is that it's a suitable place to play pickleball
Okay,
without
thank
taking
you,
any
Bob. Thank you.
mitigation steps.
Thank you. I think this will be a better discussion offline, because clearly there's some misinterpretation and misunderstanding of the RFP. And I think the ad hoc committee should take that up with the consultants. Thank you.
Yeah, just as, I don't interpret it that way. I see it as, the sound issue is an issue that we're facing, that we as a commission are processing, not just as the ad hoc that committee is addressing. And I don't think he's saying move the pickleball courts to Soul Park. That's the best solution for your problem. I think he's providing the information from the data that he collected, and it's for the commission and staff to make that decision. I don't think he's guiding us one way or another other than providing what the data is revealing. So I really don't want to be on an adversarial position with our consultant. I appreciate the work that he did, and it's our work now to process it and ask the questions that need to complete the rest of the RFP as a commission, and
I
we can
agree.
process that
I agree.
through the ad hoc. So, okay. Any other commissioner comments before we move on to public comments, questions? Okay. We have a number of speakers. I would just ask that you respect everyone's time here tonight and adhere to the 3-minute speaking rule. Our first speaker is William Wyrick. This is on item 6B.
Thank you. Very quick. First of all, these are comments from listening to just what happened. And I find it interesting that the contract associated with the RFP has not been shared with the ad hoc committee. Is that what I heard? Is that correct? I shouldn't ask questions. I'm sorry. But a contract, if it hasn't been addressing the chair, that's something that should be provided if it hasn't been. And I'm not going to ask the question because if that's the kind of thing that you clear up things at the front end with. And I also heard that the site visit was an add-on.
I think he means here. Is that him coming here is the
him
add-on.
coming here.
Or him being available through Zoom.
But those are other things that are specified in contracts. And so it would have been better, I think, instead of just discussing the RFP, the contract should have been shared as a process issue with the ad hoc committee ahead of time. These kind of questions could have come up at that time. So I think there's been the process, what we've seen already is that there's some improvements in the process on the front end. And sharing the contract and having an ad hoc committee meeting to discuss the contract. If there were some issues that couldn't be resolved there, then it could come back to the commission. So a lot of these questions are things that should have, I think, been resolved at the front end as opposed to happening now. And could have been resolved better by a process focus on contract review before executing the work. Okay.
I will say, as a comment in general, this commission has experienced many breakdowns in communications, not just regarding pickleball, but Soul Park in general. We seem to be excluded. So just as a reminder to the listening public, it's not intentional on this commission's part.
And I
we
bet you
simply
not.
have been excluded from the process. And I did express my frustration that there seems to be a workaround and that the work needs to be done in public, not in private meetings with
Right.
staff, and that has been
Or
raised,
at least,
and I would agree.
at least
that's correct.
including members of the ad hoc committee,
Yes.
that it was the delegated group. So I'm
Well,
not.
it's difficult because the ad hoc work isn't being done in the public. That was my whole point. It's
Right.
very difficult when you have a council member taking a lead or staff working with an ad hoc that isn't happening in the view of the public, and it needs to be. And that's why I brought the issue on the
Right.
agenda today.
But I think specifically, I'll just wind up here. I think what I heard tonight is that the ad hoc committee review, since they were delegated by this commission, of the contract itself would have been well advised for some of these questions to have been discussed before execution of the contract.
I would agree. And Luis, you've noted that we've asked that to ensure that that's been provided to both the ad hoc and I think the full commission should receive it as well.
And just as a reminder, we were in a bit of a time constraint. As one may recall, we're in a time constraint because Mr. Unitek was going to be in California, so we wanted to go ahead and to make sure that he was actually able to go ahead and do the assessments on site rather than virtual.
I do recall. Yes, I do recall
Thank you.
that. Thank you. Our next speaker is Bill Miley. Nice to have you here in person, Bill.
Thank you. Good evening. For the record, my name is Bill Miley. I'm going to read to you the email I sent yesterday. It's short. And I sent it as a member of the Citizens for a Sound Pickleball Policy. The email is intended to support the findings of the Sound Studies Preliminary Report, which obviously is presented tonight and is in written form. I know there will be additional details and findings documented during the month of January in preparation for the final report. I certainly support and find the overall conclusions substantially documented for having Soul Park, the site for future pickleball play in Ojai. And a couple of logistical issues here. Please note that the distance from the intersection of Signal Street and Ojai and Highway 150, Ojai Avenue, to the Soul Park entrance, as you go out East Ojai Avenue to Boardman Road, is 1 mile and a third. The distance from the park entrance to the paddle courts is 1/3 of a mile, so the entire distance is less than 2 miles. And the City Planning Commission, as you may know, and its Complete Streets Committee is intent on completing the Ojai Valley Trail for access to Soul Recreation Park. Thank you.
Thank you. Luis, I don't know that I received that email. Was that forwarded to the commission?
Yes, it was forwarded to commission this afternoon.
Oh, okay.
and
I might have
with
missed it
public
then if it
funds.
didn't come in today. Thank you. Okay, our next speaker is Leonard Cleef.
Good evening, Leonard Clafe. I live in the city of Ojai. First, to address Commissioner Wilson's remarks, information is good. You can do with it as you please, that's your job. But to object to receiving information, I conceptually have trouble with. One of the wonderful things about Ojai is that it's quiet. That's why people move here, in part. It's beautiful and it's quiet. And some parks are recreation facilities and meant to be that, and some parks, like Clough Vista Park and City Hall, the area behind City Hall, until the pickleball came, were quiet. That doesn't make them unparks. It's just a different kind of park. The preliminary report makes clear what we know, which is that pickleball is incompatible with quiet, for the quiet peace, the right of the residents to enjoy peace and quiet. Where hopefully we will have Soul Park, which seems to be the perfect location. The argument that I've heard from the proponents of keeping the pickleball where it is that it is inconvenient if it was out in Soul Park. Bill Miley just gave you some information. I went from my house, which is on Fulton Street, which is where the Little Westridge is. I live up the block from there. And the difference between my house and Soul Park and my house and where pickleball is now is about a half a mile. How inconvenient is it to have to travel a half a mile extra? And if you live in the East End or Upper Ojai or really any part in the city east of probably Golden West, it's closer to Soul Park than it is to the City Hall Park. So the distance, under any circumstances, the difference is not so great as to be any kind of realistic inconvenience, as opposed to
Please be respectful in the audience.
as opposed to the inconvenience of having to listen to the pop, 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 pop in your backyard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, what a shame.
Okay, thank you. Visiting public, please. I'm sorry. I will not tolerate it. This is a new year. We're moving into it. We've had many discussions on expected conduct for these meetings, and I will insist on it. And if you are not able to control your outbursts, I will ask you to leave the room. Tim Crowd is our next speaker.
Good evening, staff and council members. This is now the 7th time that a sound study has been taken on this one sport in Ojai. No other sport that I know of has ever had any sound levels conducted at all, let alone 7. In January 2022, Councilman Wyrick proposed an accelerated sound study to be conducted on pickleball play in Ojai. A year later, here's where we're at now. Having now completed the sound test and received a report with recommendations, hopefully this will be the last hurdle that we, the picklers, have to endure. We just want to play the game. Hopefully we can now go forward playing this wonderful sport and expanding the court availability so more community members can find the joy in playing pickleball.
Thank you. And our next speaker is Bob McPaul.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Congratulations on your appointment again.
Thank you.
And members of the commission. I wanted to make a couple of comments on what I think is an unfortunate circumstance that the report, one, has been a report that has gone beyond what should have been findings and recommendations for sound measures, but actually included conclusions. And we see this evening by a couple of the speakers who spoke, they have already accepted the conclusions of the reports, which were actually should not have been contained in the report. Those are the policy determinations that would be made by this commission and ultimately by the City Council. I think the commission did an excellent job putting together an RFP that defined the types of parameters that were appropriate for a consultant to come in. You now have a report, unfortunately, that has its primary recommendation on a facility that isn't owned by the city of Ojai and that will require substantial capital investment to make it a reality, and so will be quite a time before they'd be available. And yet, unfortunately, because of what I consider to be the premature release of this report, conclusions have already been drawn on both sides of this issue on information that is yet to be thoroughly vetted, nor the benefit of a report that actually has accurate and complete information in it. I actually believe that the consultant, who I have very high regard from the process that they went through and read through, I think they did a very fine job on that, but unfortunately has actually created a bit of an issue for this commission and ultimately for the City Council, because they have already moved into areas of policy that is not their germane. And from the perspective of an individual that has worked on literally dozens of similar reports like this, including sound reports, I never would have personally allowed conclusions of the type that they made to be included in within a report like this. And certainly I would have avoided releasing it to the public, because now it's a matter of overcoming perceptions and conclusions that others have made that by next month might be changed through a discussion from the ad hoc committee and through the other council members, could very well come to a different conclusion. So I'm hoping that despite this information, that the commission will continue in the role of looking at this matter, not just through the eyes of the sound alone, but through the greater good of the community and all the various different factors that go into making very difficult policy decisions that extend beyond just the sound itself. Thank you very much for your time in this matter.
Thank you. And our next speaker is Mark Bodycomb.
Again, thank you to the commission for all the work that you've done. I want to really just kind of echo everything that the previous speaker just said relative to what I think is the overreach of the contractor and what they have included. And I really hope that it is not something that becomes determinative, for the ad hoc committee or the commission. I guess really what I just want to say too is just be another voice that I'm here as often as I can to urge the commission through the ad hoc committee initially, the commission ultimately, and ultimately the city council to really grapple with the necessity, I would say the necessity of figuring out how to adequately represent and facilitate the pickleball community here in Ojai. It's large, it's not going away, it's only growing, and you've heard lots and lots of data around the benefits of it. And both, whatever the long-term solution is, be that in, months or years, I also want to really urge the commission to be very realistic about how that population is going to be supported and encouraged to grow in the interim period of time. So again, I don't know what type of discussions are going on. If ultimately, let's speculate, Soul Park is a reasonable or an objective solution, and that's years down the road because of negotiations with the county and investment and building infrastructure and that kind of stuff. The current situation needs to be maintained. There needs to even be opportunity for growth of the sport in the ensuing years before a long-term solution is effected. So I just want to keep putting those points before the commission and urging you to keep those things in your mind as you debate, over the upcoming meeting. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And our next speaker is Karen Quimby.
Hi, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I think I just need to name what I think is going on here, which is that there's a faction of the pickleball community that does not like the data that they see in the report, this preliminary report, and the conclusions that it leads one to. My name is Karen Quimby. I represent the neighborhood group, Citizens for Sound Pickleball Policy, and also the tenants who live across the street from the current pickleball courts. We were pleased to see the preliminary report because it confirms what we have been saying for 3 years, that the current courts at Ventura Street here at the city campus violate the city's noise ordinance, that putting pickleball courts at Lower Libby Park is highly problematic and would require sound mitigation that may or may not work, but we're waiting to hear and see what more that the data and the final report says on that, and that building pickleball courts at Soul Park is an ideal solution because it's properly sited well enough away from homes. It's very simple. I personally find it wonderful that we have this solution that's a win-win-win for everybody at Soul Park. And yes, it's going to take time to build the courts, but we are all committed, I know our committee, all to helping fundraise and get a world-class pickleball facility out at Soul Park. Now, I want to point out in regards to the preliminary report that they do suggest that sound mitigation at this current court could be using quieter paddles and quieter balls. I know we've suggested that in the past, and in fact, the city has a requirement right now and for the past 3 years that green zone paddles only must be used at the court. But it's an unenforceable situation here. Unless you put a fence around the court and locked it, and then only when a city staff person came and unlocked it and monitored the play at the court to ensure that green zone paddles, quieter paddles are used, and also quieter balls are used, there's no other way to enforce that recommendation, if that becomes a recommendation by the ad hoc, by the commission, who I understand will take the final report and then make a recommendation to City Council from that report. So I think the study has done its job in providing the data and providing some narrative around what can be done to mitigate the sound or not. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Randy Roth.
Good afternoon. Thanks for your service. I want to provide a little snapshot that I think would be helpful in illuminating some of the situations we're in. The day after Christmas, we went to play pickleball early in the morning, and at about 9:30 in the morning, the situation was that there were 16 people playing, and there were 24 people waiting to play. It turns out, just by contrast, that at Libby Park, there were very few people playing tennis. I don't think that situation was an anomaly. I think that was pretty typical. Of the 24 people who were waiting to play, it was interesting. You would have enjoyed it. There was a family from England, a mother and a dad and 2 kids. There was a family from Hawaii. There was a family from South America. These people had come here because they had heard that Ojai is a wonderful place, and Ojai is a wonderful place to play pickleball. Obviously, the demand for the services of pickleball have exceeded this current supply, and it's your problem to solve it. Good luck.
Thank you. Mr. Roth, I have one question for you, if you know.
Yeah.
Do you know if the visiting public that came, I'm just curious, where their equipment came from? Did they bring their paddles, or do they rent them, or where do they? I'm just curious if you know.
I don't know the answer. Tim, do you know the answer to that question?
Family from England used the paddles we had.
Okay, like you have a loners or something for the. Okay, cool. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying. I was just curious. And our last speaker on item 6B is Greg Doss.
And Chair, I just wanted to know, after Mr. Doss, we do have two speakers now on, three speakers online.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know I had them waiting out of order.
Hi.
Yes.
Thanks so
thank you.
much. Thanks for being here. I'm Greg Doss. I'm part of a group that's trying to help coordinate and organize and ultimately help the city build courts at Soul Park. But when the preliminary study came out, I had to come and at least address you all. I was actually part of the sound study. I was asked to be one of the players, and Mr. Unitek asked for the hardest hitting person out there, and everyone kind of turned to me. So I got to be the guy that hit the ball the hardest. And I just want to give you some perspective on what the sound study was like for me, if that's okay. I was fed balls at a pretty easy pace so that I could hit them as hard as I possibly could over and over and over again. After several, opportunities to record that sound at that decibel level, then we got to play, and we played as hard as we wanted. And I just wanted to give some perspective about the level of sound that I hear versus what I can do when you feed me a pickleball and let me just hit it as hard as I can. The decibel level is going to be a lot higher in that situation, obviously. So I don't hear anybody hitting the ball that hard. Also, I was given a specific paddle and a brand new ball that was designated as the loudest ball. So, obviously I want to play pickleball every day, and we're going to try to build some courts at Soul Park. I don't think 8 courts there is going to be enough. But what I do see, hopefully, is more social play here at City Hall in these 4 courts that are comfortable, easy access. And those balls are not going to be hit as loud as the balls that I hit with my friends. So thanks for your time.
Thank you. And I can't see the callers. Can you call them in for their comments?
And so we'll go ahead and begin with Jamie Roth. Jamie, can you confirm you can hear us, please?
Yes, hi. Thank you for a wonderful sound report by Robert Unitek. I just wanted to say that, let me drink some water. I'm not the only neighbor affected. In the report, it said there was 1 neighbor, and there's about 7. One of them is speaking tonight, Paul. I don't know if he's on Zoom, but that would be Paul Stanton. He's 1 neighbor over. And then the lot owner next to me also expressed concern. They actually sent an a text. They are adjacent to 406 South Signal. In the report, it said the 1 neighbor would be affected, and he's the adjacent next to me. And, his wife said, I'm sorry, we are dealing, they're dealing with health issues, but it seems appropriate. Please let them know that the idea of this constant noise with the health issues we are dealing with is adding additional stress to the life-threatening issues we are dealing with. Thank you, for mentioning this. So they were not able to speak tonight, but would ask me to express. And also I forwarded the 7 letters to you of the neighbors that would be affected. So hopefully that report could be amended to reflect the 7 neighbors that would be impacted. Specifically, highly impacted would be the 3 above Lower Libby. And that's what I'm referring to is Lower Libby when I speak of these, myself and the 2 neighbors. What else? Yes, so I think Louis, I had sent the letters to you in the past, but I sent them again about a day or 2 ago. I think that a vinyl sound barrier has proven not to be effective and doesn't block line of sight. And anyhow, I just wanted to mention specifically that in the report, it said one neighbor would be affected. And really, it's about 7. And as expressed in the letters I sent to you, including the Persimmon Hill neighbor. I don't know what else to say. Thank you for your time and appreciate your efforts ongoing. And Louis, special thank you for all his efforts. He's been so helpful with this. I appreciate it. Anyhow, thank you.
Okay. Then we will have Mike Borders. Mike, can you confirm you can hear us, please?
Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect, Mike. You have
Thank you.
Hi, I think hello, all you commissioners. I've addressed you several times previously. I wanted to point out one issue with the sound study. It talks about the neighbors potentially being, I'm focused on Lower Libby at this point. It talks about the neighbors surrounding Lower Libby being affected. There's another consideration which is overlooked, and that is the players on the other tennis courts at Lower Libby, who would be court 7, I believe, is probably closer than 50 feet to court 6. And court 8 is maybe 100 feet. Court 5 is maybe 100 feet. So when you look at the sound data, remember that the noise from the pickleball on court 6 would dramatically impact the tennis players on the adjacent courts. Now, having said that, I also want to point out, and I don't know if anybody else has made this point, that the consideration of these sound issues is not determinative of what the commission is going to recommend to the council. Rather, it's just one consideration of a variety of considerations relating to where we play pickleball in the city. I'm representing the Ojai Valley Tennis Club, and we have raised a number of issues in prior meetings, and there have been a number of people from the tennis community in town who've raised a number of issues about putting pickleball courts at Lower Libby. All of these issues have been discussed at length previously, both before the Parks and Rec Commission and before the City Council. Many, maybe even most of our concerns can be found in my written comments, which I submitted to the Parks and Rec Commission on March 2nd, 2022. And then we proceeded to have a hearing where we had 12 to 15 speakers representing the tennis community, 3 minutes each. So it would take probably 45 minutes to an hour to go through all of the concerns we have about putting pickleball at Lower Libby. So I would like to ask the commissioners to go back and take a look at those, please, before you adopt any resolutions. And for now, I think I'm not going to bother to go through and reiterate all those points, but I think you can find them in the minutes from prior meetings as well as in my written comments submitted. So that's all the comments I have for tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I believe we have one more online speaker.
That is correct. Okay. So our next speaker, I'm actually not able to see their name, just simply MacBook. So I will go ahead and bring in that individual to speak. And hello, can you confirm you can hear us, please?
Yes, thank you. Hi, all of you, and thank you so much for this thoughtful conversation. My name is Susan. I live on Signal Street. I'm one of Jamie's neighbors, and we don't have a problem with pickleball. It's a wonderful sport, and I appreciate what Tim said, that no other sport has required so many sound studies. I think he referenced 7, but that's because this is a really loud sport. I keep wondering why everyone is so disturbed by the findings from the sound studies, pointing to the feasibility of Soul Park. That's just, factual information that's based on the data. We hear the players from our house by City Hall from the minute they start in the morning until it's over at the end of the day. We've it's part of the background of our life, but I can't emphasize strongly enough how much louder it would be if it was in Libby. The incline and the canyon amplifies all the sound. As with a lot of other situations, it's easy to take a really strong position when your life is not being impacted. So I'd like to ask those of you who are pushing to have it in Libby and expanded there to imagine yourself in our situation where your daily, your hourly experience of enjoying the peace and quiet that brought you to live where you do is impacted, the thwack, the shouting, the sharpness of the tone, there you are just wanting to live as we all do enjoy nature and listen to the sounds around you. And suddenly, the rest of your time in your home is affected. I'm guessing, based on human nature, that if something like this were proposed next to your house, you would be doing the very thing that we are. You'd be begging people, please, please don't change our whole lifestyle just to satisfy a small group of people. I mean, you're cobbling, the proposal is to cobble something together that might let 4 to 8 more people play or wait for a shorter time. But the cost of that decision to accommodate and facilitate the play of a few more people at the expense of so many of us whose lives would be, constantly have this sharp sound in the background of our lives is really, really high. And I would just ask you to focus on creating a comprehensive pickleball center in Seoul. It's such a wonderful option, and not, penny wise and pound foolish when so many of us are just, as you would be, really, really hoping that you won't, change everything about our day-to-day life when we came to Ojai feeling so grateful for the peace that it brings, and then have that taken away so that a few people don't have to drive another half mile or whatever else it might be. And I do realize people are impatient and they want to have something right now, but please, please consider the many of us whose lives would be forever changed. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Chair, we do have one additional speaker who just joined.
Great.
So we'll go ahead and bring them in. And that is going to be Paul Stanton. Paul, can you confirm you can hear us, please?
Yes, I can hear you very well. Thank you. I would just like to agree with the last speaker and reiterate the fact that the number of people who will be impacted by this is much larger than is indicated in the preliminary report. I don't understand what the objection to a larger pickleball facility at Seoul Park is. It seems to me to be the ideal location, and one that won't impact the peace and tranquility of neighbors in Signal Street, and also actually on the other side of the bike trail, where it's becoming an issue there as well. So that's about all I really wanted to say. Thank you very much for this discussion. We'll wait and see what happens with the final report when it comes in. But just one other thing, and that is my wife Susan is actually somewhere out there hoping to speak as well.
Is Susan the one that just spoke earlier, or is it a different Susan?
It's a different Susan.
Okay.
Not seeing any other community member on Zoom.
We're not seeing her on Zoom.
Oh, okay.
So perhaps she can join us later. Okay, any, besides potentially her, no other comments?
No,
Okay.
no other comments.
I think the commission's received the update. We've taken the public input. Is there any other discussion that the commission would like to have at this point prior to, with the consultant specifically? I don't have any other questions. I'm anxious to have, I think it was beneficial to have him here, certainly to hear all the input from all parties and navigate those questions that have come up regarding the final report. So with that, we can move on to 6C, which is to have the commission receive an update on the Sarasota multipurpose sport court projects and provide feedback to staff. And I do have two speakers here in person. But I think if we could receive the report first, perhaps that might answer some of their concerns or questions.
Sure. Give it a quick minute. And with that, I would like to thank Mr. Unitek and Dr. Wireman for joining us this evening. Certainly more than welcome to stay for the remainder of the meeting if you wish. But as Chair noted, we will be moving on to the next agenda item here. So for the Sarasota multi-purpose sports courts project, just wanted to go ahead and make a correction there to the date. I think the staff report says December 2nd, but it's actually Monday, December 5th. Staff met with Interim Public Works Director Lindy Parma to review and discuss the proposal submitted by Jensen Design and Phoenix Civil Engineering. Now, while both firms were well qualified and indicated that they had the ability to assist the city with the project, the proposal submitted by Phoenix was ultimately nominated to be the top choice based on qualifications, methodology, and experience. In addition, the proposal was found to contain detailed information on the services, giving a more clear cost. Staff recommends proceeding with the proposal, and if found acceptable to the commission, staff can prepare a report with a recommendation for council's consideration. The proposal from Phoenix included, but is not limited to, reviewing the existing engineering plans for completeness and accuracy. The firm, of course, will complete plans as needed, review existing topography and geotechnical reports, and incorporate them into the updated plan, determine if any additional topography survey work as needed, and if so, will provide, and if so, that work will be provided by Benner and Carpenter Inc., a subconsultant to Phoenix Engineering. And that cost is included with the ultimate cost provided by Phoenix there. In addition to that, provide an updated estimate cost for construction. In addition to that, RGSE, a structural engineering firm, has been retained as a subconsultant to Phoenix to design the slab components of the project. And again, that cost is included with the cost that has been provided. Phoenix will also assist the city with the construction bidding process, in addition to the construction management during the entire process there. With the proposal, as the project commences, it will be broken down into several phases, which includes the design, build, and construction, and will be laid out as seen in the staff report there. The service fees from Phoenix will be billed as time and material and are not to exceed $127,710. Funding for the project has been made available from various sources, and at this time, a total of $492 is available to complete the project. That includes
$92,000.
Yeah,
Okay.
492,000. Thank you.
Just making sure.
Yeah. And that includes a grant generously provided by the Ojai Civic Association, a grant from the state of California, Proposition 68, matching funds from the city for the Prop 68 and Measure C funding. In addition, staff is exploring additional grants from the state, as well as reviewing the city's budget to identify any potential funding sources that could be used for the project as needed. In addition to the proposal for the project, staff did hear from the Community Development Department regarding the director's exemption. It was noted that that there was no appeals received by the December 5th deadline, and therefore the exemption for the courts became effective. It was noted, however, before building a building permit application could be submitted, that additional information would be required for the project. That included the engineering details for the post-tension slab, information on the fence post footings, basketball hoop footings, light post footings, and electrical lighting design. With the assistance of Phoenix Engineering, staff will be able to submit such information to CDD so we can submit the application. And with this, I can turn it over to the commission for any questions or comments.
Thank you.
Yep.
Really exciting. Question on the grant from the Prop 68. Is there a build by date for completion on that?
If memory serves me right, it was June of 2024.
And what is the timeline that Phoenix is? Have you discussed one?
It was 8 weeks.
Oh,
yeah.
8 weeks for what?
Construction.
For construction.
But-
Yeah, that was the estimated.
But that's in phase 3, so how long does phase 1 and 2 take?
There's a lot of variables that will go ahead and play into it, and that, of course, for short answer to your question, I don't have that information just right offhand, but there are a lot of variables that will play into it, and moving forward with a proposal being one of them.
With an expected completion to be prior to June of 2024.
Yes. Staff has a very, very ambitious date that we're hoping to complete the project, but we really would like to go ahead and move forward because we understand that this is a project that has been a want from the community for many years, and so we're really trying to do what we can, of course, doing things right to do it by summer of 2023. And again, that's very ambitious, but that's something that we are looking to try to do.
I have a couple of questions.
Go ahead.
One, the service fees for this company, it is like 26% of the, at least the total available, which is not really the total cost, I guess. And so, I don't know, 26% seems pretty high as a portion of a project that since I've been on the commission for less than a year and a half, and it's doubled in the cost. So that leads to my second, I guess I'm sort of questioning whether 26% is the best we can do.
Sure.
But that leads to the other question I have. Since you wrote exploring additional grants and reviewing the budget, so that says to me you're expecting the cost to exceed what's in hand, right? Correct?
Not necessarily. It's looking at funding that we could go ahead and utilize should we go ahead and move forward with a proposal.
Utilized for what?
For the cost of the services of Phoenix Engineering. So one of the things that what staff learned is that consulting services, the costs have gone up. The other firm that we looked at was Jensen, and their cost was right around $50,000. But in addition to that, there is also additional costs for electrical and lighting service, as well as the structural design. That was not included in the $50,000, so it would have been $50,000 plus those two additional expenses. When we asked to give us a ballpark figure, because they couldn't submit it, they didn't have the information to go ahead and submit it at the time that they relayed their proposal to us. When we asked to give us a ballpark figure of what we could go ahead and expect, it was indicated it would be like right around $100,000. But it wasn't a definitive figure. With the Phoenix, it's a not to exceed amount. And again, going back to the reason why it was nominated as the top choice is one of the factors is that it's not a exceed amount. That's what they provided to us there. If the commission wishes, we can certainly explore other engineering firms. We can reach out to other engineering firms. We can get additional proposals. We can definitely go ahead and do that.
Well, can I just have a follow-up question quickly? Because I'm not suggesting necessarily you have to go get more bids or whatever, but especially given that you have an ambitious time table, and we do have the requirement that this be done by June of 2024. Will this fee, does this company have a track record for really fast-tracking projects and getting them done in a, limited time? I mean, is there a reason to, I guess, are there reasons beyond their basic expertise that would merit this kind of fee and merit the work of going out and trying to find more money so that the money that's already in hand can be used actually in the construction? Because that's what I heard you say. It's like we're going to go out and try to find more money to pay this company. So is this a company that has a track record for getting projects done in a very timely manner?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. And this is something where staff relied on the expertise of our interim public works director. Our interim public works director does have experience working with this firm in other capacities. And it is from my understanding that they would be able to go ahead and get the project completed before the deadline, the June 24 deadline. Again, the summer of 23, again, that's understood that's very ambitious.
24.
No, 24 is when we have
starting
to
in
spend the money,
23.
and 23 is the goal for
He wants
completion.
he wants to get it done this year.
Yeah.
But I
didn't hear that. I'm sorry.
I didn't at first, and then I got it. So, I guess a little bit of history on other projects we've done. When I thought we were looking was for engineering to confirm engineering work we'd already had done, which would then identify what we needed to do. And that I understood. I guess the difference here is that it appears to me that we are paying for things that we didn't historically used to pay for out of that were in-house for us and seem like we're paying a consultant. I'm not saying it's an inappropriate
I was
expenditure,
thinking the
but
same thing.
we have often done our bid, like we don't usually have bid phase assistants historically with Public Works. They handled those portions of projects, and then the construction management. On a project this size and this complexity, I think historically, a lot of those things, and this is just my understanding of past projects that Parks has worked on that we has seen come through our commission, that was in-house staff work. So I kind of look at this and I look at what we're really doing is, and I don't understand the staffing. I have no idea what staffing is like at the city right now. And I'm not opposed to it, but I think that number reflects more outside consulting work to do what might have historically been in-house staff work.
Correct, yeah. And I think part of that is in past, the city did have an in-house engineer, whereas we don't at this particular time. And that's where we'd go ahead and rely on those expertise for some of that construction management. And now the bidding, assistance and bidding process, yeah, we could definitely go ahead and look into bringing that more in-house.
I'm not suggesting that we make changes to what we have in front of us, but I think it's important to understand
Why?
how it is significantly different than the perceptions we had of where it was going. Because I don't understand, that is for the city to understand its staffing, and if this is something that needs to be done as consulting work, I'm not questioning that because I don't really have a full understanding of what all is happening. And as far as the firm, I don't know. I will leave that to people more familiar with these things. But I think the cost just reflects a lot more work than that I personally had an expectation is what we were bidding out. And that's where I think there's a difference, because it is a much, and I also understand that we had tried for months we had put out other RFPs for confirming the engineering, and this has been handed off to 4 people now, maybe?
Yeah, 3 or 4
people. So it has changed hands, and each time it changes hands,
The price goes up.
Well, the price goes up,
With
and we
inflation.
seem to lose some of our institutional history, and then we're not sure about where we are. And so I'm not questioning what we do here. I just think we need a clarity on that this is more than we had ever expected to pay for these kinds of services, which is partially a change, industry-wide, even getting anybody. It's a small project. No one was interested the first times we went out and tried to find consultants. So I had the same reaction. I'm like, boy, this is a large number compared to our budget for this particular project. So if this is the way that we need to do it to get it done due to staffing and the conditions within the city and just in general, great, but it was surprising.
I think the only way that we'd be able to really compare is to get a third bid, to request another bid to compare to see what other firms would charge. That's certainly, it seems like that wouldn't be that difficult, and we don't want to delay a recommendation to staff and council, but I think just to do our due diligence, it would be nice. Typically, we do try and get 3 bids on, just to keep it competitive and not having a sole source type of a situation. So
Sure. Yeah, we can definitely go ahead and do that.
we do have a couple of public speakers. I think now would probably be a good time to hear their concerns. Go ahead, Rose.
Just one other, and I totally concur with your suggestion that we at least get another bid. But I would also, I think, given that we sort of have to move forward with this fairly quickly, that part of that conversation with both Phoenix and anybody else that bids on this is that, there should be some kind of timeline that the staff puts together, and that there's some penalty if the company can't help deliver that timeline. In other words, or incentives when they help. Maybe incentives are better, but there's this is a somewhat of a crunch project now as we get closer and closer to something we're obligated to. Otherwise, we have to return the money, right?
Well, we have till June of 2024 for that.
But
So
given everything that's happened over the last 2 or 3 years, I agree. Summer of 2023 is very ambitious. I would say winter of 2024 might be as realistic as you could get, and you guys still have some slippage. So I just think that
2023, you mean?
No, I'm talking.
We have to have it spent by 2024,
We
is
have
that
to have
right?
it spent by June of 2024. It would, if everything was a go today, I think January of 2024 might be the realistic, it's done.
I'd like to keep with the aggressive timeline. I don't have an interest in pushing it until we need to push it, and we use the information we get to make that decision from my perspective.
I just would just suggest that it be part of the conversation with these folks, that there is a timeline in mind, even if it's not on this page.
And that's been part of your
Yes,
discussions.
that has
I think
been part
that's
of the
actively part of the
discussion.
discussions,
Yeah.
yeah.
Let's hear from our speakers, and we can conclude any additional discussions. I have 2 speaker cards that have 60 on them, but only one has a name. So I have a Brenda Kraut, and then I have a blank card, and I'm not sure. Okay, all right. Okay, that's all right. Brenda?
Good evening. I just had a couple of comments. One thing is, I didn't hear you mention in regards to funding is, I thought didn't the council authorize a portion of Measure C to be directed towards helping this be completed?
It's on
So-
there.
it's on there?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, okay.
156,742 Measure C funding from the city.
Okay, well, I missed that. Okay, thank you. But I've been surprised the past few meetings that after, this project's been going on for 4 years, that you're still in the design stage. It's just got to be so frustrating to all of you. I just can't imagine that it hasn't been able to move forward more quickly than that. So I hope that this new contract will do that. And another comment that I had is that by virtue of the city trying to appease a very small group of, or small number actually, of neighbors around this Libby Park City Hall campus pickleball court. This is setting a very detrimental precedent, in my opinion, for neighbors around any of the city parks, and that they can object to any kind of new park activity. So like the multi-sports court, and I know a couple of meetings ago at a council meeting, I already heard one individual that lives a couple of blocks from Sarasota Park voice their objection to this multi-sports court. So I hope you keep that in mind as we go forward with the decisions about both of these projects. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Wyrick?
Yes, Bill Wyrick, ex-council person.
Prior.
But I promised I'd be on the other side of the podium, because I'm still an interested, engaged citizen. I'm managing about a $2 million project right now for our private sector situation, and I got the same questions you had. I was struck by the fact that, including farming out construction management, I'm the project manager, including farming out construction management, civil engineering, architectural services, everything like that, our percentage for this kind of, for this same thing is about 1/3 of this 26% on about a $2 million project. Now, I know there are elements of scale involved, and the percentages tend to rise with the smaller scale, but that's an extraordinarily high percentage. I had the same questions that you guys had. When they talk about, like, for example, engineering details for post-tension slab, fence post footing, basketball hoop footing, these are not mystery issues. These are pretty much off-the-shelf engineering details replicated by thousands of cities nationwide for these types of facilities. It seems to me that we ought to pretty much, I would really appreciate if there was some more due diligence on, are there requests from other cities for these types of facilities where the construction details, design details could be shared? They're public record from other cities, something comparable. Time and materials, a very odd way of talking about a design build services company. Usually it's you have a build time plus reimbursables associated, not time and materials. Not to exceed 127,710 should include markers in terms of what the billing rate is and who is doing the oversight of that billing to make sure that that they are being held accountable. One of the issues with design build is who independently does the value engineering to make sure that there's not things built, complications built in there that are more, frankly, self-serving for the billing entity rather than the people that are, paying for it, namely the taxpayers and the city. So I just think that there really is some questions that I have. One other point I wanted to make was that the city does have under contract the building permit inspection services, and that company does other services involving construction services. And I don't know if the city has explored or staff has explored, could there be a contract supplement from the existing company that does our the building official work, rather than have somebody do this separately. So I think a lot of the questions you guys already asked are very relevant, but I was struck by the same thing, 26%, especially when I'm currently doing a project on the $2 million level for about 1/3 of that percentage for all of those types of services. I don't understand why the public sector has to pay more than the private sector by orders of magnitude more for these types of services, and one sees that fairly frequently.
Thank you. I think that it's, I'm not really sure what the engineering structure is for the city, but I do hold the opinion that things done in-house are, there's some ownership to it. So if we're not able to do it, we're not able to do it. But certainly having an established relationship with a firm that is able to provide a more competitive rate should be something that I think we should explore. I'm not sure if staff's seeking a the feedback in the form of a recommendation, or are you just, what is it that staff is actually asking for from the commission tonight?
It was, if this proposal was found acceptable, then then we could go ahead and move forward to put a report together for council's consideration. But based off conversation and the request that we received, we'll go ahead and get an additional proposal, present that back, and compare the two. And we can go ahead and move forward.
Yeah, I would agree based on this discussion and the public input. And can you explore the option of potentially adding on or amending an existing contract that we have for those types of services? I just think that having someone who works with the city, just that vested interest would benefit the recreation department cost-wise.
Will do.
And I don't have any paperwork in my packet for 6D. Was there something, or is it just it's just a verbal?
Yeah,
Okay.
just a verbal update.
Okay.
And really for 60, there's really not much change from the last time around. Staff does continue to go ahead and work with the county on the MOA. At this time, it is, there's really no change from the last time around. And I think part of that was a little bit of the holidays. But we are continuing to go working with the county to get that pushing forward.
Okay.
Is there an MOA that's been drafted?
There has been an MOA that has been drafted. Right now it is with legal. It is being reviewed. But there hasn't been any change from the last meeting.
When you say.
I don't recall seeing the MOA, and I think that was my objection, that the commission as a whole has been excluded from the process, and many of the things that we discuss, I think from it was kind of fast-tracked, and we felt, I know that in the discussions that we had, that we have a lot of valuable input regarding how an MOA would be structured. And I just want to, again, for the record, object as the chair that the commission in general was bypassed, and that is our purpose, is to really vet that information, and whether it be the amount of gopher holes on the field, things that the council just may not even consider with their schedules and availability, that the commission is really knowledgeable on. So again, I just would encourage that they include the commission prior to executing that, because there's so many things that this commission can bring to the table on that.
And the verbal updates are mostly what we're getting. So we're getting a verbal update on what's happened without supporting documentation of process work, but it's illegal. So I mean, I don't know what that means.
Well, it means to me that there's meetings that are happening outside of the view of the public that are affecting the public spending. And I just, again, will say, I think it's improper. It's improper to allocate those funds without going through the proper channels. It's tens of thousands of dollars of the taxpayers' money. And it doesn't just affect one group. It's not about pickleball or equestrian or softball. Right. It's about recreation use, and the city is carrying the tab basically for the entire valley. And there's been no discussion at this commission really about it at all. So again, it's just, it's disappointing, because that's why they have us in this place, is so that the visiting public can come and share their thoughts and their concerns, and we can hear their input and make appropriate recommendations on how it should be structured. I haven't seen any document that I can recall that talks about how the MOA is structured.
Sure. So first, we can definitely go ahead and resubmit the request if the commission is interested for a commission member. I think wanted to be part of the ad hoc committee, so we can go ahead and resubmit that request. The second portion to that is that as far as the MOA, I think because the potential of change in the verbiage, if we brought something forward, it may not necessarily be applicable the next month if there is.
No, I understand there's legalities involved,
Sure.
but I feel like we're already at the point where it's in legal, and you don't generally go back to legal and say, well, how about this? How about the playable aspects of the softball field, given the current condition? we're paying for something that's useless because the condition of the fields would not support recreational play currently how they are, whether it's for soccer or softball. They're not in a condition, and there's fiscal impacts that are not being, that we're not aware of, that are being created. And then we're going to have this agreement, and we're going to be asked as a commission to bring forward recommendations for programming, for example, that just are not going to be possible after you already have an MOA in place that we've paid for.
Sure, no, and I completely understand. One of the things I do want to go ahead and know is that staff has relayed those concerns to the ad hoc committee in regards to forming this MOA, and I'm happy to go ahead and share those concerns once again.
Well, maybe we could just put it on the agenda, and someone from that ad hoc can come to our commission meeting so that the public knows what's going on.
Sure.
I think that would be really helpful.
Who is the current ad hoc committee? Who's sitting right now as the ad hoc committee?
Sure. So the ad hoc committee was formerly 2 council members, as well as the city manager, and I participated in those meetings as well. So those council members that sat on the ad hoc committee are no longer on council.
That's why I was asking the question.
Has the council agendized it for reappointment of a new ad hoc?
Not at this time, to my knowledge.
Okay, so it's currently a staff project.
Yep.
Okay.
That actually might be better for the commission. Maybe we could just agendize it so that we can see where staff is at. And by staff, you mean you, or do you mean cities?
So it would be myself and the city manager.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I would again request that city manager include the commission in the work product.
Sure. I'm happy to pass on that request.
Okay, and let's see. Informational items, Recreation Department report. Luis?
Sure.
Excuse myself.
So we're happy to announce that the department hosted winter camp the week of December 26th and the first week of January. A total of 73 participants have attended the camp thus far. Tomorrow is going to be our last day. Staff has facilitated various group activities, including arts, crafts, scavenger hunts, different sports games, movie time. And we have had a really, really good time with the campers. It's really nice to see the center filled with laughing little ones and running around and taking advantage of the pool tables, foosball and air hockey. It's been a fun time there. In addition to that, the youth basketball program is off to a great start. We have 145 participants enrolled in the program. Practices began on the week of the 19th, and the first game is set to kick off this coming Saturday. All games are scheduled to take place in the gymnasium there at Sears Odie Park, and clinic for those in K through first will begin at 9, and games based on division will go ahead and begin at 10 a.m. Starting on that hour. This month, a new activity guide will be made available for the community to enjoy. We have great offerings to choose from, including our staple programs. We also have various drop-in activities to choose from as well. Community members are encouraged to reach out to us with any questions about the offerings. Or recommendations for any offerings that they'd like to go ahead and see from the department. In addition to that, we are excited to announce 2 new senior offerings. The first is Social Seniors. Social Seniors is a time where seniors can come together at the center to enjoy the company of friends, neighbors, fellow community members, and create new friendships. The department will host various activities such as movies, assorted board games, billiards, ping pong, and more. This is a free offering. We actually have spoken with some of our seniors that participate in our senior program, and they've offered to host the program there. So with that, we are able to host it for free. That will be held each Tuesday from 9 a.m. to 11:30 a.m., again at the community center. The second is a low-impact line dancing. We have one of our staff members that will be teaching seniors various steps, routines, and combination moves. This offering allows the opportunity for improvement in health and wellness by improving cardio, strengthening muscles, balance, concentration, coordination. Seniors are encouraged and welcome to join us for a fun time. And in addition to that, we will be, this month, we'll be starting off with hosting Kids Movie Night twice a month. So that will be held the second and fourth Friday of every single month. To conclude the report, we'd like to go ahead and highlight the Mindful Movement program led by instructor Terry Kowalski. Terry offers four exciting classes for children's ages 7 to 12. Mindful Movements is a program designed to empower the youth through the movement of arts, building self-confidence, self-love, self-discipline, and self-respect through a range of creative, failure-free movements. And I have to say, this is one of the programs I really enjoy seeing. One of the classes that he has to offer is a sound saber class. It's kind of like lightsaber. When it moves around, it creates this really noise. It's a short sword shaped, but it doesn't have any sharp edges or anything of that nature. And just to see the kids run around and play with this, it's really neat. It's really, really neat. And with that, we'd like to say that we are thrilled to have Terry as part of our community and offer this program to our community members to enjoy.
What times are the movie nights running this time of year?
Drop-off is at 6 and pickup is at 9.
9?
Mm-hmm.
And where did it land with the dinner? I know you at one point you did pizza and then was bring your own dinner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's bring your own dinner.
Okay.
The department continues to provide. So we're doing juice, popcorn, and chips.
And what?
Chips.
Oh, chips. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. The kids really like that.
Yeah.
What's the age?
5 to 13.
And the seniors, is that the 65 and up? Do you have an age? Is it more like the fitness, like the senior fitness turned into adult fitness?
Yeah, it's more like that, and yeah. So it's going to be the target. There's no defined.
Okay. I just want to make sure everyone knew that if you're 58 and you really
you're
want to come,
more than welcome
please
to
don't
come.
stay home.
Come on
Go
over.
ahead.
We'd love to.
Yeah, it's
all a mindset.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, so I just
Yeah.
want to make sure we're letting everyone know if this is
Yeah,
something
yeah.
you're interested in, please come participate.
Yes, please.
Great
Thank
things.
you.
And
Thank
I'm
you.
excited about the camp.
Yeah,
That's
as am I.
great.
Yeah, it's been a fun time. It's really neat. Like I said, just to see the, especially right now because it's raining. We have the kids in there and they're having a really good time, and a lot of them, they draw, and we're putting up their art projects on the wall, and it's a good time.
Thank you.
Great problems for me because now my daughter has all these play dates, so now she met some new friends.
Your social calendar's getting full.
The joys of parenthood, for sure. You should take advantage of the movie night. They will really like that. That's really, my kids love that. So. Very good. Okay, any other questions for Luis on his report? Comments? Okay, and we have a city council liaison report on the agenda. We've amended it to indicate it's Councilmember Lang, Rachel Lang. We don't want to blindside you, but you're welcome to give us any update or let us know how things are going for you so far.
Great. Thank you so much. Well, I just want to start by saying that I really appreciate all that you are doing. Hearing the decisions that you're making and all of the complexities of those decisions and trying to keep everybody happy or, to meet the needs of the common good of our community. I just really appreciate your work and your efforts. And I want to let you know that I am here for you. I am your liaison, and if I can support you in any way, I'm here for it. One of the platforms I ran on was what I love finding creative solutions that bring people together. And so I just wanted to let you know that I'm here, and you can reach out to me, you can contact me, we can sit down and have coffee anytime. And then also, I wanted to just say that I plan to be. I'm getting up to speed right now, learning a lot about my role and learning about how I can best serve you. And so I will be meeting with you, Luis, to read over some of these documents that have been mentioned tonight, and I look forward to being your liaison. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, any commissioner reports and comments that we haven't really covered? We've covered the ad hoc for pickleball. I think that's really our only active subcommittee right now. So unless someone else has any other comments. Okay, and for future agenda items, we have the Soul Park contract coming, draft of the MSA. We'll, of course, look for the pickleball finalized report with the ad hoc input. And
Continuing updates on the sports, multi-sport.
yes, absolutely, the sports courts.
Didn't have that on, sorry.
Yeah, we'll make sure to go ahead and bring back that third proposal as well.
Okay, I will then adjourn at 7:52.
Thank you.